Hello, and welcome to Social Work Speaks, a podcast dedicated to helping future social workers explore behavioral health careers through interviews with Dayton area professionals. This podcast is made possible by a generous grant provided to Sinclair Community College's Social Work Department by Behavioral Health Career Exploration. I'm your host, Caleb Cromer, and today I'm talking to Dr. Ebony. So stay tuned for my interview with them in just a moment. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Social Work Speaks podcast. Today, I have Dr. Ebony here. Dr. Ebony, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Good. So, Dr. Ebony, this is going to be a little bit different than I normally do things because normally I do have a little bit of background on the person that I'm interviewing, but this time I don't. So, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall, and I am currently Associate Professor of Social Work and Practicum Director at Ohio Dominican University.
Okay.
I've been there for about 2 years, but I've been a social worker for about 13 years.
Okay, nice.
I'm licensed in the state of Ohio. I also serve as the National Association of Social Workers Insurance Board, Assurance, as their president. And it's our liability insurance board. So I serve as the president, and I also serve as the president of the ACLU of Ohio.
Nice.
So I'm the first Black woman to serve in that position for the state. And so I'm
Awesome.
super proud of the work that the ACLU has done in Ohio. And I'm super passionate about not only micro issues, but macro issues and policy and issues around advocacy and LGBTQ rights and immigrant rights and, racial justice. Those are kind of, child welfare. Those are like my heartbeat issues.
Okay, that's a lot. You have accomplished a lot, and it sounds like you are a person who has a lot of goals, and that's amazing. So in achieving all of this, could you kind of walk us through how it all got started? What were your motivations to getting into the field?
Yeah, so I have a Master's of Divinity degree in theology, and I went to a historically Black college, which was Virginia Union University.
Nice.
In Richmond, Virginia. And it was the approach of looking at the sacred text through the lens of social justice. And so I always say that if you go to Virginia Union, you will definitely be transformed in the way that you see Christianity, in the way that you see the Bible, in the way that you see theology. And so they showed us and demonstrated for us and cultivated a lens where we've seen the Bible through a social justice lens. And so I knew that even though, yes, I'm a minister, I did not necessarily want to go and be a pastor at the moment.
Yeah.
And so social work was a pathway that allowed me to do the work and also do the work in the community, to be a voice, to be an advocate and with communities. And so that was kind of my way of getting into social work. And then also to when I was an adult, I found out I was adopted as an adult. And my mother growing up, we had always had kids from child welfare. I just didn't know I was one of them.
Yeah.
And so that journey of finding out I was adopted and locating my biological family also increased my motivation and passion for social work.
Okay, so that just kind of made you want to help people more.
Yes.
In a different sense? All right. Yeah, that would have did the same thing to me too. Oh my gosh. So with that being said, have you faced any challenges getting to the point that you're at right now? And would you like to speak about any?
Yeah. So, when you think about the journey of being a social worker, a lot of us go into the field because we have our own trauma, right? And so one of the things that I've learned quickly with being a social worker is that every social worker needs a social worker.
Yeah, for sure.
Or, so I have always kept a therapist on deck because the more I did this work, the more I realized that I had to continuously do my own inner work, right? And so that hasn't been without, faults and, triumphs and roadblocks, right? And so, when I think about it, just navigating meeting my biological mom. That was hard for me. Like I located her, and I located her while I was in my master's program, getting my master's degree in social work. And I located her. She was in Georgia. We connected. And I had to deal with just how do I establish a relationship with this woman I don't know, right?
Yeah.
How do we do this, right? How do I found eight, I'm the oldest of 13. How do I cultivate this relationship with 8 siblings that I located, right?
Yeah.
I found one of my brothers through MySpace because that's when MySpace was still like around.
Right.
And then the rest, I hired like a private investigator, and like I was able to locate them. And then how do I cultivate, those relationships? And so that was a journey, right? It was difficult. My mother, my biological mother, she was, navigating that, and then also trying to appease my adopted family at the same time, where you have this sense of loyalty
Yeah, exactly.
towards your adopted family, right? And they're kind of skeptical of your biological mom, like, why is she trying to, And so navigating that. So therapy was extremely helpful for me in establishing boundaries and navigating. And at the time, I was doing my field placement at Adoption Network Cleveland, and that's what they do. They locate biological families and loved ones. So I served on like panel discussions for adoptees. I got to, participate in so many like birth mothers, like ceremonies and things like that, being a part of the culture at Adoption Network Cleveland and understand the triad of adoption, which was extremely helpful.
I bet. That is crazy. I didn't even know about that. I didn't know those were things that happen. But
yeah.
I guess in every area of life, people need help and assistance. So having those people in that area must have been very, very nice.
Yes.
To help recover from that. That's so much to deal with, like mentally, though.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm stuck on right now after hearing all that. I was like, how would I even deal with all that stuff? I assume it took a really long time to work through all those layers.
It did, because one of the things is like when you find out you're an adoptee, your identity comes into question, right? You're like, so if you grow up not knowing you're adopted, you're like, oh, when I have kids, they're probably going to look like these individuals, right? Or, they'll have these characteristics. But when you grow up and you find out you're adopted as an adult, everything that you thought was identity attached to your adopted family is not yours. It's not, you're adopted into that family, but biologically, and you're not. I was giving a history, a medical history that wasn't even mine. Like, and my doctors would be like, "Boy, you really have amazing blood pressure," being that because like high blood pressure, all that runs in my adopted family. And so now every time I go to the doctors, right now I have to, like, if I get medical, I have to write that I'm adopted because I don't know a thorough history of my medical history because I'm 3rd generation foster care.
Right.
So my aunts were in foster care. They're prior, my grandmother, they were in foster. So I'm 3rd generation foster care. So I met mine, but I don't have a clear picture of medical history. So going to the doctor every time is like a reminder that I'm adopted. Like it is always that reminder.
That is mind blowing to me. I'm about to be 23 next week.
Yeah.
I've never in my life heard about something like that. I didn't even know that was going on.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang. There's so many different layers to all of that going on. I couldn't imagine. That's like my whole world being shaken right there.
Absolutely.
So luckily, during that time, you said you had your therapist that you were going to, and they were kind of serving as that, hopefully, cushion rock that you needed in such a time of chaos, because that's a lot going on, different. So do you kind of feel like you serve that role for some people now dealing with those things?
I absolutely do. So I have a private practice called Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall and Associates, and I primarily see Black people because there's a shortage of Black therapists. And I also take Medicaid. And so I believe that in order to be an effective therapist, especially if you're a person of color, specifically Black, you should be taking Medicaid. If you're not taking at least all of it, you should at least have a percentage built into your practice because we can't provide mental health service in an equitable way without taking CareSource, right? And so I actually see a lot of clients. Majority of my clients are Black women and girls.
Okay.
But I do family therapy. I do couples work. And I approach therapy from a different lens. So I look at it, I try to approach therapy from a decolonized lens. So I'm not just going to talk about, hey, what's going with you on a micro level. I want to talk about how are systems impacting your connection? How is white supremacy impacting your connection with your partner? How is it showing up in your household, right?
Yeah.
How is racism actually showing up in the way you interact with each other? Because you might be experiencing things on your job and then you're bringing that home, right? So how do we create safe spaces within our connections and our communities, and approaching those things from a systemic lens? Like, some people are not wrestling with depression because they're just genetically predisposed. They're wrestling with depression because they live in oppressed situations that change their moods, right, in their environment. So in therapy with me, my goal is to make sure that people understand how systems and structures impact their mental health, and how we can utilize activism as a protective factor to combat those things.
Okay. So you have your own private practice.
Yes.
Could you kind of tell us what your like day-to-day is having your own private practice? What's that like?
Yeah, so I typically see clients I'm more part-time because I teach full-time, but I see clients like Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and I have a typical day, but I see clients into the evening because a lot of my clients work and they prefer evening hours. And so I always try to accommodate that. Right now, like, I could see maybe anywhere from like 10 to 15 clients a week.
Okay.
And so the thing about being in our community and providing services, I mean, once you get past the stigma of mental health and you get into therapy, a lot of times it's hard to discharge clients that look like me and you, because it's hard to find one. So when they find them, they're like, okay, like they start doing the work. And as my clients get better, I have to always be like, hey, I'm about to discharge you. You're doing amazing. Yeah. You've built the skills that you need to be successful. And so, that's kind of what the typical day looks like. I'm extremely a type A, so I get up at 5 a.m.
Oh, okay.
I start my day. And so, documentation in the morning, or if I'm grading papers, things like that, I do my meditations in the morning before I start all of that. But I'm just an extremely disciplined person when it comes to like that, to like my work life and stuff.
Okay, and that's awesome. That structure is very motivating to me, at least. Like, if I was coming to you, I'd feel good taking advice from you. So you start early, 5 a.m. What time do you get off normally?
Typically about 7 or 8 at night.
Okay.
Seeing clients. So my clients are like, I see them I might see them back to back, or I might space them out. It all depends on kind of like the day. I always take the month of December off from seeing clients. All my clients know that. Like, December, I'm off. Yeah. And my new clients, they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I always take the month. It's just my own self-care that I do.
And that's important. Very important. Because you got to make sure you're right first before you can be helping everybody else too.
Absolutely.
So that's good that you take that time to make sure you keep a level head in a field like this, because it could get pretty overwhelming with all the different people. I do know about that. So that's a really smooth day-to-day. It sounds like you got it all down. So I'm curious, how long are like the sessions usually?
Yeah, so I offer 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and 60-minute sessions.
Okay.
And depending on, as my clients progress in therapy, my sessions decrease, right? So like, if they start off seeing me weekly, they'll then go bi-weekly. They'll go down to 45 minutes, right? And so the goal is that you're obtaining the skills and the tools that you need to be successful for termination and discharge. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm really interested in this whole private practice thing that you do, because to me it's so fascinating. And I'm just going to ask this based off of my own personal thing. So sometimes it can be hard to open up, especially as an African-American man. Do you ever run into issues with clients, like trying to get them to open up? Does it take multiple sessions to get to the layers you need to get to, or do they normally come in with an open mind?
So typically, to be very honest, a lot of when I'm seeing specifically Black women, they're already in crisis when they come to therapy. So they're already ready to talk. Okay. They're already open. I don't have to kind of like, they're there. Like, because a lot of times, because of the stigma around mental health, sometimes people have tried all these things, and then when they finally come to therapy, they're like in a state like, oh, I'm ready, right, to do this work. And so I found that to be rewarding. Also, too, like specifically with Black men, I do have to, depending on who the person is, like, I do have to work harder for that rapport, right? And I'm okay with that, right? Especially in couples work, because sometimes they might assume I'm aligned with their partner.
Yeah.
When I'm like, I'm not. And I also do work around like polyamorous couples and same gender loving couples and thruples. And so I'm super duper progressive in therapy, right? So I don't just see heterosexual clients, right? I see clients that are in all sorts of gender. They have the expression of different sexual orientations and gender identities. So
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
You could have a whole podcast episode about just that, because there's so much that can go into that, because it's already complicated with just the regular man and woman. But when you have a bunch of different things going on, how do you even deal with that?
So, like, if I'm seeing a polyamorous couple, right, like, I can see them individually and I still have to maintain confidentiality, right? And then I see them as, a group together. I'm very great with ethics. So, like, I always tell people, if I do individual with you, only one that will tell it is if you tell the person. But, I have strong confidentiality around it. Even when I do couples work, I might do individuals with the couples. But like I always say, like, that's your duty to let them know that. Like, I'm very strong and I have strong boundaries. So, like, I'm not going to divulge something in couples work that one of them divulged in private session. So,
Okay. So does that particular, because I know you work with different, just single people and all that stuff. Does it get stressful trying to do that?
I wouldn't say stressful. It can become, so when you're doing therapy, right, you're holding space for people's emotions. You're holding space for people to process. People are processing trauma. People are telling you their deepest, darkest secrets, right? Yeah. And so it's not stressful. It is heavy.
Okay.
Right? Like, it's heavy. It's intense. I actually count it an honor and a privilege that people will even allow you in their lives like that. So I don't take it like lightly. So for me, I typically have to like debrief after that. So like if I've seen 8 clients for the day, I'm probably not doing that documentation till the next day in the morning, because I've already taken my notes. I'm gonna go back in and document tomorrow, the next day, just because I'm so exhausted. Because you're doing active listening, you're staying engaged, you're summarizing, you're doing interventions, right? And depending on where they're at, I might have to referee. I always got, if it's a couple, right? So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about the whole time. You gotta hold the room, make sure they're good, because it can get rough with certain couples.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's more than just a whole mental and just conversation. That's trying to mediate the room, make sure everybody's good. That takes a whole extra layer of effort.
And that's why I don't let anybody minimize what we do as like social workers, like clinical social workers. Like, people, oh, you just talk to people. No, it's not just talking. You're implementing interventions. You are holding space for someone that could have suffered childhood trauma. Like, it's not just, oh, you just talk to people. And I think people have that misperception about what we do.
Right. And so that is definitely a wonderful perspective to share with everybody, because that's really what we try to do here on the podcast, is give real world examples of what it is like in these fields out there for students, so that they know what they're getting into. And the reason why I've been asking so many questions, not necessarily on the script, is because I've always had some interest in being a therapist. I always like to help people. And a lot of people in my life have felt comfortable enough to tell me certain things, vent, and all that stuff. And I do pretty well at giving advice, I feel like, and they always seem satisfied. So, maybe 10 years or so down the road, maybe I'll be a therapist at some point.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very interested in that field, because I think it's something I could do. I have a feeling.
I actually think, like, because there's a shortage, especially of Black male therapists, like, I think that it should be something that, if you could do that and you have a gift with it, I say definitely pursue it. There is, I like to say this a lot of times, there is a lot of money in private practice.
Oh, really?
A lot of money. Yeah. And so, depending, like, I have a good friend here that has a group practice. So she has therapists under her, right, that she pays. And her business has grown astronomically, right? There is a
Nice.
shortage of mental health professionals. And as you know, like social work is a growing profession.
Mhm.
And so I think private practice, even if you had a small part time one, can pay huge dividends. Because I don't think as a social worker, you have to be broke. I'm
Yeah.
not, you will never hear me say that. Like when people are like, oh, there's no money in social work. I'm like, who? Like what money? Like that you're not talking about me
Yeah.
because I have made money in social work, right?
Mhm.
Like I've done consulting, like DEI consulting for Warner Music Group. I sit on their DEI faculty. Like I have done consulting for, corporations. And so
Yeah.
like this degree is very marketable beyond agency work.
Okay, that's really inspiring to me because
Yeah.
I didn't know all that. I would love to get into that because it's so natural for me. Like, I love talking to people, I love helping when I can. And I feel like my perspective on the world is a little different. So maybe I can just add a little bit to their perspective to change it, to have them think in a more positive way in some cases. That's kind of my mindset about it.
Right.
But for you, with having so much experience, what have you enjoyed most about the field?
I think I love that we are one of the few fields that has the mandate of social justice and that we work with marginalized communities to do this work, right? And so I love that the field is so vast that I can speak out. I'm not getting fired for that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm supposed to do, right? Like I'm allowed to be I'm allowed to align my personal values with the profession that aligns well. So I can do both of those things, right? And so I love that. I love the flexibility of social work. I love the massiveness of the field. I love that the helping process can be implemented with different populations. If I don't want to work no longer with this population, I can move to another population.
Yeah.
It's the flexibility. And that's why I tell everybody get that master's degree and that license. Don't let anybody talk you out of that license because that license is the ticket. Like I know travel social workers right now doing 13-week contracts in California making $50,000 for 13 weeks, right? So there is money in social work. There you could work in. I have a friend that works for Procter and Gamble in their wellness center, and he's a social worker in Cincinnati. He's a graduate of Howard University, and he makes well over six figures doing that. And so people typically think social work is just at an agency. No, you can work in corporate arenas. You can do consulting. Like I do a lot of consulting around organizational trauma. I go into organizations that have experienced trauma and corporations, and I do work with them around that trauma. I hold safe spaces for Black employees that have encountered racism. Like during the George Floyd killing, I did a lot of Black spaces for like Black employees, like and I use the skills as a social worker.
Right.
And so I tell everybody like there's money in social work and there's opportunity in social work. We have one of the most transferable skill sets, I believe, out of a lot of professions.
Okay. Yeah, super prestigious. And it sounds like there's a lot of different paths, so many different areas you
Yes.
can go to and still end up in a very good spot.
Absolutely.
So because of that, let me ask you this. What would be the advice you would give new students or students who are about to graduate and get into the field who might be nervous and not know what path to choose?
So I would tell students, as a professor, I tell all my students, you need to get involved with your National Association of Social Workers, National Association of Black Social Workers, National Association of School Social Workers. You should be a part of your association because your association is what gives you the leverage and network that you're going to need. Because I was the former vice president at NASW at the national level, and because I served as regional director in Ohio, I have massive connections across the country.
Okay.
Because of those positions, right? And so a lot of students think that you don't need networks. You need networks not only to leverage for yourself, but also to leverage for your clients. And also because I'm in education, I leverage my network for my students. So if my student says, I need a job and I want to relocate to California, I have contacts in California, right? And so the network isn't just for me, it's for everyone else. So I tell students, run for office in your professional organization. You can be MSW, you can settle on the board as an MSW rep, a BSW rep. Build out your network now. The other thing I tell students is get that license. I know there are some places that no longer require the license. Ohio still requires a license. In Ohio, you can be licensed at the bachelor's level. I say get the license.
Okay.
Get the license at the master's level. License up, and I tell them all the time. And then also too, I said, I think students need to expand, their view of social work. So get other experiences. Like I always say this, like you should be in 2 to 3 years, you should be moving up in the agency. You shouldn't still be doing frontline work. If you're staying at one job, I would say no. I think social workers should move jobs. You should have no loyalty. I know this is going to be controversial. I'm not telling social workers should not stay somewhere 40 years at one place. You should be looking to move up. Because if you're already staying past 5 years, you're probably stagnant with your salary. You have to be willing to look and grow. And so, I mean, there are people that you can be an executive director of an organization with an MSW.
Okay.
I mean, and if you look at people's 990s, you can see what they make. I mean, the MSW director at Alvis, she makes like $500,000 a year. She got an MSW.
Dang.
So it's just, I mean, like looking at people's 990s, you can see what people make.
Yeah.
And so the MSW is the terminal degree. I have a doctorate degree, but you don't have to get a doctorate degree to be successful in social work. You can just have your master's with your license, and there will be so many doors and opportunities for you.
Wow. So it sounds like we're kind of entering a golden era here of social work. There's a lot of opportunities, which kind of brings me to this topic really quick. Now that we know all this information, you guys have done so much work for the future generations because we have the internet now. You guys are able to share with people all over this information that was probably harder to understand and get back in the day before we knew all this stuff. So could you kind of tell us during your time and experience, how much has the field changed over time?
I would say the field has changed drastically. One of the things that I've appreciated is the implementation of electronic health records.
Oh, okay.
And the Obama administration made sure that organizations transitioned to that. I was in organizations that still had like paper, like files, okay, like and
Physical copies of it. Yeah.
and so I appreciated the trend. Of course, I worked in an agency where people fought that, but I appreciate the transition of that, right? But I also think too, like you have now, social work is now becoming even more progressive and adopting these stances of like doing the work around, social justice work, racial justice work, environmental justice work, right? Social work is building this vast field, and we understand the impact of climate change on poor communities. And I feel like it's just grown so much, and the research has grown so much, and it creates so many different opportunities, I think, for students as they start graduating to say, hey, like I can see myself here. Maybe I want to do environmental justice for a while. And then maybe I want to transition and do some civil rights work for a while. Mm-hmm. Maybe I want to run for office as a social worker, right? There are so many representatives in our community and in our profession that sit in all of these different seats. So,
okay. One thing that I'm kind of curious about is, are there a lot of young people in the field like doing these therapeutic things for people, or is the age kind of like older, maybe 30s and 40s and stuff?
No. So are you asking for like those that are like doing therapy?
Yeah.
Yes. So I do see younger people going into the field. They might be working in agencies providing therapy. They might not necessarily have their private practices yet because they're still working on their licensure.
Okay.
But once they get that licensure, I do know a lot of students that I've mentored to help them, once they pass their licensure, to set up their private practice, because it's not that expensive. It really is not. It's not a lot. It's not a lot to go through, like credentialing with the insurance company. A lot of them, I help set that up with them and mentor them.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Because they might need a little bit of help sometimes, I bet, because some of that stuff sounds like it could be a little confusing without some guidance.
Yeah, but I think, if you're a social worker like me, I mentor a lot of students. I give back, like, to my students. Like, it's not like, even after they graduate, they still contact me. Like, and I used to be a professor at Central State University. And so all my students that have now went on to get MSWs, some of them are getting doctorates, I still talk to them.
Oh, wow.
And mentor them.
That's such a great connection to have like that, because you need those people in your life when you get out because into the real world because it's a little bit different out there.
I
And
agree.
that just shows that you're being that rock and that cushion in more ways than just your own social work that you're doing. And
Absolutely.
that's a good thing because it can get so hard. And just having that knowing, not even like some people probably don't even always use that connection that they have, but just knowing that it's there and they have that option creates that comfort. At least it would for me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh no, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of my mindset about it because any old connection teacher or something that I can kind of talk to in a moment of desperation or in need, that would make things go a lot smoother for me, in my opinion, you know. So it's awesome that you're doing that for people. You're so helpful to everybody. And I wanted to ask, since you're doing all of these things for everyone else, how do you deal with burnout when it happens in this field?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm a big firm believer in, her name is Trisha Hershey. She has a book called Rest is Resistance. I'm gonna get my rest.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna let I'm going to take my rest. I'm going to value my time. So I have protected time with my family, like on the weekends and to be in community. I host a lot of events at my house. I host a lot of like black women at my house. I get photographers. We get food. I do the whole shebang. Like
Okay.
I travel. I know that I trust that your generation is going to carry this work on. Right. And so I am a person that I can sense if I'm getting burnt out. So I have already built that in. I'm like, I get, not just not just self-care, but I believe in community care.
Okay.
So I believe when my community is good, I'm good. Right. And so I have a group of black women that are social workers and we're all in higher ed and we check in on each other. We travel to conferences together.
Oh, that's nice.
And so we try to like maintain that. But, like I tell all students, like the best way to protect against burnout is to prioritize your care of yourself. What does that like? Like me, I love going to like concerts. I go to comedy shows. I love laughing.
Yeah.
And so I try to maintain like I'm proactive about caring for myself and my family and community.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a good plan to make sure that your mental stays good. But in an acute situation, let's say you had like a hard day, it was a lot going on, people telling you things, it was pretty deep and heavy. Are you able to like when you leave work switch it off or is it still kind of lingering and you have to like wean it off a little bit? How does that go?
I have done both, right? It depends on how it is, like what it is, right? Like there have been moments I've been able to like turn it off. And then there's been times where I've done like an emergency session with my therapist the next day to process, right? Or I've had emergencies. I still get supervision, even though I'm independently licensed with an S, my supervisory, I still pay a psychologist for my supervision. I still process cases. I still think through cases. And so I might have to do that. It all depends. Because I've had some doozies.
Yeah, I bet.
And so I've had to still like seek out supervision for those things. But it all depends. Like I've been able to turn them off. I've been able to not turn it off. And like I said, it just depends on my client and like what they're dealing with.
Yeah, okay. That's such an interesting perspective because I'm trying to understand myself how it would be trying to deal with so many different people and situations. And I mean, everybody has the ability to kind of shut things out, but in an instance like that, it would probably be a little bit harder because there's so much more that you have to deal with and kind of, process because you're supposed to be helping them too. So that this work is not easy work.
It's not. And I think the thing about private practice versus working at agency, I can pick my clients, like the level of acuity I want. Like I might not in my private practice, I'm not going to take clients that have high acuity. Like they might, that's just not my scope. I'm not going to take them on in private practice. Like if you're actively in heroin addiction, you don't need me. You need substance use, right? You need to be probably going inpatient, right? So there are certain things like I'm very honest about my scope of practice. And so I think as social workers, we do clients a disservice when we're not honest about that. So there are some things that I'm not treating.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to refer them to who does treat them, right?
Yeah.
And so, but versus agency, sometimes you don't have that much agency around who your clients are. So I used to work in intensive home-based therapy where I went into people's homes at Osterland, and then in Nationwide Children's, I was a multi-systemic therapist. I went in people's homes and did therapy, right? And so I didn't really get to choose those cases.
Yeah.
You know, those cases were given to me. And so I had to work with what I had.
What was that like going to people's houses and stuff?
So it's actually my favorite clinical niche.
Oh, okay.
I love home therapy. And the reason why I love doing work in the home is because people can act in the office.
Yeah, for sure. It's a different environment, so they don't have to.
When they get at home, you
themselves.
can be like, oh, that's why. Okay. Like you're able to say, oh, that's why that dynamic's like that. Oh, okay. And I'm trained in like family therapy. I love family work. So I was able to like see dynamics in the home that I probably wouldn't have got in the office. Right.
Right.
And so I absolutely enjoy doing work in the home. I like doing systems work. So not only was I in the home, but I also work with their schools,
Okay.
their mosque, their churches, whatever those systems they were involved in, juvenile court, whatever. I was involved with that. And so it was never a dull day. You also have flexibility. I need flexibility in my schedule. So I'm not a person that can do an outpatient and work somewhere and just see clients all day at an agency. I liked home base because I got to make my schedule so I could see clients in the evening. And that's when I seen a lot of them. So during the day, I was doing like documentation or
Okay.
doing systems work.
Some other stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, my boss would be like, why are you here? Like I would be at Nationwide. She'd be like, why are you here? And I'm like, oh, well, she's like, your clients aren't until this evening. Go home. Like, you know, so I like flexibility. I knew that very early as a social worker. I am not that 8 to 5.
Yeah.
That's not
It's
me.
not for everybody. I get it. I'm not that type of guy either. But that's such an interesting thing. I'm learning so much that I had no idea even existed. So going to people's houses and everything, and you mentioned that extra bit of information that you would get. Would that make it easier to make your assessment and everything?
Oh, yes.
It would?
Like, I mean, when you're trained as a family, when you do family work, like even watching where people sit at can show relationships and alignment. And it's just, you're taught to look at things in a way that is very insightful, that gives a lot of robust meaning to the assessment and to the interventions and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really pick up on those types of things. That must be what you learn and everything.
Yes.
On those different body languages and stuff. It's probably a whole different perspective for you then.
It
So,
absolutely, I tell all social workers, as you get trained in this, it becomes second nature. You won't be able to turn it off. Like, you will literally look at somebody that's unhoused and say, I wonder what happened in their lives. Like, you can't turn it off. It becomes a part of your being. You know, if you're really, really sold out to this work, you're constantly asking the assessment questions. Like when I was dating my husband, I did the assessment the first day. He didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was skilled in that. But
Yeah. He had no idea. He wasn't supposed to know either. That's a skill that you earned, though.
yeah.
And that's good. You can help decipher good and bad and everything, what's going on with people and all that. It's a really useful skill, especially with nowadays that people are so crazy, unpredictable. You can kind of read things in between the lines.
Oh, yeah, body language all day long.
Yeah. And that's something that it can make or break. Like if somebody's lying, you can tell, and like stuff like that. Very, very helpful, especially in like a relationship. And you work with couples too.
I do.
So you probably know way more, all the tricks and things that people be using. But since you're so experienced in the field already, you've been doing this for a while, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently leading up to this point?
Yes, I wish I actually would have went in. I actually wish I would have majored in social work undergrad. I wish I would have done it a lot sooner.
Okay.
I did not have an undergraduate in social work. I went to Bible college, and I ended up getting a master's in social work. So I don't have an undergrad. So I had to do the 2-year degree, the 2-year master's.
Mhm.
But I actually wish I would have majored in social work as an undergraduate and had a BSW and then got my MSW. That's what I would do over again.
Okay, I understand. So for students who are in this grind right now, seeking motivation and everything, and they're in school. Now, I don't know too much about the schooling when it comes to, trying to get those licenses and everything that you were talking about. So what are your tips for the students in school right now trying to learn all of this stuff?
So, I mean, if they're at the 2-year level, like at the associate's level, you definitely want to be looking at a BSW program. So you want a bachelor of social work program. And these programs should be accredited by the Council of Social Work Education. And so I tell students all the time, make sure your schools are accredited. Look them up on the Council of Social Work Education website to make sure they're accredited, so that you can test for your licensure. And so after you get your BSW degree, I always say, because you can take your licensure the semester before you graduate, so take your licensure. But I tell everybody they should do the advanced standing, because you can get your master's in a year. So you apply, so you graduate from your BSW in June, you start your master's degree, and then you got 1 year, and that's it. And you are done with going to school per se, right? And then you take your licensure at your after you graduate, and then they have your license, your LMSW, and then you will go on and get your hours, and then you'll take your clinical licensure. And so I tell all students to go straight through, get it out the way. There is money out there, like the Council on Social Work Education, they offer a scholarship. The National Association of Social Workers offer a scholarship. Join your professional organizations as a student, because the amount is cheaper. And then also to get involved at the conferences, attend the conferences. I always tell students, like, you got to take social work by the horns and make it to what you want it to be. And that's why I feel like some students just go to school. And I'm like, no, you should be at conferences. You should be at advocacy day. You should want to take this profession by the horns and really, really grow yourself. And so I tell students to do that all the time. And I would say get to know your professors, because you're going to need recommendations. If you know a professor does not like you, do not ask them to write you a letter for grad school. I have to tell students that. I've gotten letters and I've literally been like, did they know this professor felt this way? So I always tell students that travel to conferences for your professor. When you go to grad school, apply to be a graduate assistant, travel to conferences, get on people's research projects, let the school pay for you to study abroad. There's international social work, like the Federation for International Social Workers. Like, there are so many opportunities for students to do a lot of work in this field.
Can you go in a little bit about the international part?
Yes. So the International Federation of Social Workers is an organization. And so we are a part of the North American, the NASW, we're a part of the North American portion, but we have reach into other countries like Africa, Europe, all of that.
Really?
UK, yes.
I didn't know that.
And so there are international pathways for social work. You can work for Amnesty, you can work for World Bank. I have a good friend, she is a therapist for World Bank. She does a lot of work. She's in the United States, but she does work with immigrant men who struggle with abuse. And she does therapy with them, and she works for the World Bank.
That's awesome.
So there are ways that you can do international social work and study abroad, because a lot of times people think social work doesn't just exist right here, right? There's other countries, right?
Yeah.
And so I think students should look at, like, how, if they're interested in doing international social work. I mean, NASW, they have chapters that are internationally that they could get involved in. And so I think, making sure you create those relationships. Like, I have relationships with indigenous social workers that are at in the United States, that, like, Okalala Lakota College, I have colleagues there that teach at tribal colleges. Like, I went to South Dakota to see what does social work education look like in a tribal college, on a reservation. Like, what does that look like, right? Understand that our field is vast. We got indigenous social workers, we got Hispanic serving institutes, we got, these multiracial HBCUs. Those programs look differently. They offer different things. So I think it's like, I tell students, like, where do you see your best fit at for your MSW program?
That is awesome. They have everybody watching. There's so many options. The sky is the limit. There's so many things that you can do. I'm hearing now with this. Like, basically, you can sculpt it to whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely. That's why I love this profession.
Yeah, it's your choice, I guess. So, through all of that and all of the changes and everything over time, we're in this technological world. Everybody's basically connected now. Do you feel like there's more eyes on this whole field of behavioral health? Do You think more people are paying attention to mental health now, comparison to back in the day?
I do. And I think social media has been good. I think it destigmatized it. Like, social media made it okay
Yeah.
to go to therapy. And I love it. Like, I love that people are having communications about mental health. I'm glad that people are able to talk about it. I'm glad that there are settings that people are able to advocate for each other, to provide, hotline information to ensure, like, for example, the state of California, on their student IDs, they actually have like the hotline, like a suicide hotline on all of their school IDs, right? Like, I just love how mental health has been, destigmatized, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the professor I'm pro social media. You can be on your phone in my class. We're going to use Kahoot. I don't shy away from technology. I want technology in my classroom because I think it's an effective tool to reach people.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you utilize social media for your private practice and your business?
Oh, a lot. So, like, I send my clients TikToks.
Oh, nice. TikToks.
Unfortunately, I did delete the app, and so I don't have it right now. So
It's back now.
Yeah, I can't get it back because I deleted it.
It's back. No, it's back now.
So it's in the App Store?
It's in the App Store right now, yeah.
Look at
like
God.
a couple days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's back now. You can do it.
So I do. I send my clients, like, I might send them TikToks. I might send them, videos, documentaries, things like that for them to use. But I also do a lot of work around like art therapy and stuff. I'm not a certified art therapist, but I do have guidance that I consult with an art therapist about things I can do with my kids, my teenagers, because I like narrative therapy, poetry, journals, writing. One of my clients, she wrote a novel while she was in therapy.
Oh, wow.
And would share it about her trauma and her childhood trauma and stuff like that. So we used to do a lot of work around narrative work. And narrative therapy is so effective with, like, adolescents. You can't bill insurance for it, but it's still effective. And that I'm still going to use it because I think it's a great, like, I have like some of my adolescent Black boys will write rap and bring that to therapy. It's powerful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
They got to work through it in different ways, and everybody expresses themselves in different ways too. So it's good that they have that outlet to be able to use.
Absolutely.
And maybe make a career out of it, because sometimes you can discover things about yourself when you're going through those periods, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, even in class, I use, like, I play Not Like Us, and they had to dissect Kendrick Lamar's gatekeeping qualities of Black culture. I had them do an assessment on Drake on Meet the Grams. Like, I do all sorts of stuff in my classes.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm more than just a PowerPoint I can teach. I'm sorry, that's my gift. I
Yeah.
love teaching.
And that's good. You
Yeah.
make it fun though. It's not
Yeah.
just teaching.
That's what I want. I want people to want to come to class.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
like, oh God, I gotta hurt.
Yeah, and we need more professors like
Yeah.
that, because it's so hard, especially when you have a lot of classes and it just drags on through the day. Having somebody like you would be so refreshing to
I
spice
love
things
teaching.
up. Yeah, that's awesome. And you keep up with what's going on social media and stuff.
Love
so
it.
You can relate it, because my generation, we're always so into it. And you bring it into the classroom, then we'll actually pay attention because we kind of know about it already, which is awesome. So,
Like, I follow a lot of influencers that are your generation.
really?
They're really dope.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
smart, engaged, activists. Yeah.
Creative and
Yeah.
all types of things. And they're going crazy right now. The content is insane. I'm so glad they brought TikTok back,
Yes.
because we do need that as a creative outlet. Because I'm an editor. I'm a video editor. So I
Yeah.
like posting things on there sometimes, and other video stuff, maybe a little short film stuff. And just things along those lines. It just gives me an outlet to do it.
Absolutely. And I just like the real time, like, dialogue that can happen within TikTok. Like, I enjoy it. I think it's such a fantastic tool, like, to engage
Yes.
and
I agree.
have really vital conversations. I'm a TikTok fanatic.
That's awesome.
I'm so glad you just told me that when I leave here, I'm literally downloading that.
Yes, yes, it is back. Download it. Finally, you got it back. And that's awesome that you incorporate it in what you do. But as we reach the close here, there's one thing that I always like my guests to do, just as this, we do this for the students mainly. We want them to feel inspired and, ease their minds about what they're going through in college at the moment. So is there any advice? It doesn't have to relate to social work or anything. Is there any advice that you would want to give our viewers that could help them in life in general?
Yeah, so I think that one of the best things that we could do with each other is stay in community, you know, allow people to show up as their authentic self, allow people to be who they want to be, love who they want to love, and have proximity to people that are different than us because proximity creates empathy
Yes.
and engages them. And so I feel like if we stay in proximity to folk, we can actually do a lot more work together.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's very nice. So I have really enjoyed talking to you today, and you've shared a lot of awesome information that I'm sure everybody can benefit from. But if anybody wanted to do any further research or get closer to you, how would our audience and any agencies get in touch with you or your organization?
Yes. So you can find me at drebonyspeakshall.com. And associates, excuse me, Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall and associates.com. And then also my email address is Dr. Speaks Hall. It's DRSPEAKESHALL at gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram under Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall. I'm on Facebook under Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall.
Okay, perfect, perfect. All right, everybody knows where you can find her, social media and everything. So I want to give a thanks to you for joining
You're
us,
welcome.
because I always like to say that this might just be a little tiny piece of social work since you're doing this for the viewers, and this will stay here for a long time, hopefully inspiring others generations from now. That's my hope for the future with this whole internet thing. I hope it stays for a very, very long time. And people 10 years from now, 20 years from now are going to see this and hopefully still feel inspired despite the change in time because I mean, at the end of the day, the social work is always about the social and human connection, and that's always going to be the core.
Absolutely.
So I think that these messages can be used at any time. So it's a really, really big thing, I think, to get onto a podcast like this and share this information because it's super, super helpful because it just contextualizes everything. It's
Yes.
coming straight from the source, somebody who's in the field who knows what they're talking about. It's just a nice, easy way to get information. So I
Absolutely.
just want you to know how impactful you being here really, really is on a social work scale. Because even though it's just YouTube podcast, people listening, it impacts more than you'd ever know.
Absolutely. I
People.
agree.
Yeah, so we really appreciate you doing this, Dr.
Thank you
Ebony.
so
Thank you.
much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course, we got to bring y'all on here because as loud as the voice can get, we want to get it loud so that people can hear it everywhere. You said that this is a whole world thing. It's not just in the U.S. Everybody can watch this from different countries.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
So everybody can get a taste of what this social work life is really, really like. And it's, for me, it's a learning experience. I learned just along with everybody else. That's what I like to say. I'm still learning too. So it's just, I want to show massive appreciation for everybody who comes on here because it's such a big thing. And I think some people don't really realize that. But I also want to thank our viewers for coming to join us and listening today. If you want to find more information about behavioral health and other episodes of the podcast, go check out our website at behavioralhealthcareer.com. You can find a bunch of different things, sources, and other episodes and stuff like that. So go give our website a look. But with that, we will see you next time on the Social Work Speaks podcast.
Bye. Have a great day.